Amazing because our passion is limitless and our drive is intense. Therefore, you will not deny our grind. You are now listening to the Faith, Grind, and Inspire podcast.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another great episode of Faith, Grind, Inspire podcast. I am your host, Gene Alert.
And I am Jeffrey Patrick, your co-host with the most and the toast. You know what I mean?
And today we have a very special guest, Mark Wolf.
Yeah, Mark Wolf. He's
love
the
it.
president of LavaFish.
In the house.
In the house. He's the president of the LavaFish Advisors. Yeah. Go ahead and let's just jump right in. I want to jump right in.
Do you want to know how I even named the company?
Yes, I do.
Let's go. I like it.
So I have a deep background in new product and innovation work, sustainability work, and I said I need something that reflects innovation. So I worked with my partner, my wife. She's got the company. Under her belt.
Nice.
We did a brainstorming session with white paper all over the walls and everything. Came up with all these different phrases, and then started looking at pairing some things together. And LavaFish has kind of a ring to it. And then I thought about it, and we decided that the idea of a fish swimming through lava is counterintuitive. Whether it's after a volcanic explosion, hardened lava, or liquid lava, what fish could swim through that? So we thought it was an innovative concept, and then I went and Googled it. So then I found out that LavaFish is a mythical creature in gaming culture. But I don't game. My clients don't game. Maybe the kids do.
They made their kids do.
LavaFish Advisors was born that way.
I love it. I love that.
That's awesome.
I was wondering about the origination of that name. So the origin. That's
LavaFish.
LavaFish.
That's a good name.
Yeah, thank you.
That's a good name. And especially when you're dealing with sustainability, it fits like...
Absolutely.
Wait a minute, is that... Let me think about this here for a second. A lava fish. And when I went on your website and I saw like the frog.
Yes.
Yeah, but you notice one of those frogs was red and the rest of them was green.
I noticed that.
It just got saved by a lava fish and got swept out of the lava flow. I'm making that up.
Oh, okay. All right. So go ahead.
So Mark, let's take it back, right? Because you have a long list. Your resume is really, really full.
Fortune 500
Fortune 500 companies. You've done a lot. So let's start. I would like to start in the beginning.
Sure.
Where are you from?
I am right here from the island of Manhattan.
Oh, you're from the city?
I was born in the city. I was raised in the city. I went to public school through grade 6.
Okay.
And my late father was a psychotherapist, and my mom, who's still alive and kicking, was a New York City public school teacher.
Oh,
What's your
nice.
mom's name?
Pearl Wolf.
Pearl Wolf.
And she's an author if you like reading romance novels written in historical genre.
Yeah?
Yeah, good stories.
What's one of her books? I'll look her up, though. Because I'm a reader. I like to read.
She's got her own website.
Yeah? Pearl Wolf.
And the stories are great. The character development is great. But, guys, when you read sex scenes written by your mother...
Yeah. I was like, oh, my God.
You need to go talk to Dad, who's a therapist, and work some of that out.
That's a household.
Yeah, my mom's going to be 90, and she's living large. She's still out there. She's traveling. She's still writing and
touring.
Yeah,
nice.
That's what I'm talking about.
I love that.
Talk about sustainability.
Living the best life.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Mark, I want to know what actually made you do a pivot to being on your own and being an entrepreneur and taking your life to the left.
Yes.
I know exactly the moment that it happened.
Yeah, I want to know. We all want to know.
We all want to know.
So I mentioned just earlier that referred to my father as my late father. He passed 8 years ago. He was a psychotherapist, and being a psychotherapist defined the man. Every fiber of his being was defined as being a psychotherapist. And he had a couple of significant illnesses in the 11 years leading up to his passing, 3 of which my brother and I said, this is the last time we're probably going to see Dad alive in the hospital, and it wasn't. And so I had the gift of a lot of extra time, which a lot of people don't have. And what ultimately was the cause of his demise was a brain tumor, a GLBT. And he had chemo, he had radiation, and the man saw patients up until 3 weeks before he died.
Really?
Wow.
Yeah. Some in person, some by Skype at 84 years old. He was Skyping with patients. And it really showed truly who he was. And in the end, the last couple of days, the ability to speak was not a function that he had. He was able to understand what was going on. And the day after that he passed, he had introduced me to one of his former patients, somebody in the Diamond District, where I got the wedding hardware for my ex-wife and shopped collaboratively with the only other wife I'll ever need for
the partner.
And I let him know that his therapist, my dad, had passed away, and he wrote me a note, very short email. And he said, "Your father was instrumental in the transformation and illumination of my life." And I was like,
yeah, that was heavy.
Yeah, it was like, everything slowed. My heart skipped a beat. I lost a breath. And my burning question became, what's your legacy going to be? And I looked at the employer that I was working for. That I met my wife at my former employer. I got 2 kids through college at my former employer. I mean, there were a lot of good things, but quite frankly, I wasn't making the difference in the world that I knew that I was able to make. So I kind of scratched around very quietly. And 17 weeks and 4 days, not 5, 4 days later, I retired from the large life insurance company located here in New York, one of the top. They're in the Fortune 500. And at my wife's support and suggesting, I spent a year just doing nothing. It was really hard.
Yeah.
Really hard.
I know.
Been working in corporate America for years and years and years. It's like, it was hard. I mean, at one point, I literally took an online driving course to reduce our auto insurance, and it was one of those where they dripped out the content, so you literally had to sit for 8 hours, and it was like, I mean, I just felt accomplished that I did something that day. But it was kind of a clearing the decks kind of thing. It did after I retired, and I didn't know that I was going to become an entrepreneur at that point. There was really sort of this, seeing what would happen when the yeast rose, what kind of loaf it would bake into.
Yeah.
So literally 8 days after my last day reporting for work, my wife and I got in a car that my mom had gifted us, and we did a 10-week cross-country trip.
Really?
Wow.
And 9,280 miles, 22 states, good chunk of time in California.
Yeah.
And the first edge that I leaned into, and why I bring that up, was we had only 3 small pieces of that trip planned. Like the first week, the end of October, we left on October 8th. The end of October, Thanksgiving, and something at the back end. And that was it. Everything else was just kind of not so much spur of the moment, but what moved us and what interested us. So I had picked a particular hotel train that I had uncovered in my last business trip, a La Quinta. Not a high-end train, but chain. But you know what? Beds were comfortable. The sheets were clean. They had a free breakfast. And they were pretty much in all the cities I needed to go to. And about 3 weeks into the trip, it's like, if there's a La Quinta here, there must be a reason. So I guess the first real surprise experience was we were in Colorado Springs, and we needed to be in Marin County, California, in about 10 days. And it's like, okay, so where are the stopping points that we're going to go? And the first place that we stopped at was in Ely, Nevada, which I will never forget. We found a diner, but it wasn't a New York diner experience. So we were there at about 7:30.
Ely, Nevada experience.
Well, yeah, there was a lot of like animal heads hanging on the wall. And my wife said, "What's the fresh vegetable of the day?" She was thinking of ordering a dinner, and the waitress said, I haven't served any. Let me check.
Yeah, well, it's all meat over here.
Wow. Exactly. It was all beef.
Yeah, it's all meat.
But then the next stop ended up being Moab, Utah, which I had never heard of before. And if you've never heard of it.
Yeah, one of my boys had Zach, big up to my boy Zach. Zach went out to Moab, Utah to do some construction. He was one of those construction workers, and he was working on something over. He's a welder now, but he was doing some big business.
Well, apparently there are 4 national parks within 25 miles. It's the mountain biking mecca of the world.
Yeah.
So, I mean, my wife and I did some very easy, gentle river rapids. We did some riding around some of the monuments. We went hiking through the fiery furnace, and we did a moonlight Jeep Hummer tour over Slick Rock.
River rafting is one of the... I've had so much fun doing that.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it was so much fun.
Yeah.
And I was like, wait a minute, man. No wonder these people do this all the time, because this is
It's exhilarating.
it's thrilling.
Yeah.
It's thrilling. So that's when I went back in Harper. I think it's Harper Ferry in West Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
You can do white river rafting over there, and you get to ride around. And it's
this was very gentle because it was ahead of the snow season. It was the end of their summer season, so all the snow melted,
so
come down. So it was class 1 rapids. It was
right, nothing crazy.
Nothing crazy. But it was fun, and it kind of reaffirmed our love for being out in nature and on the water, and we both really enjoyed hiking. I actually have a photo from a hike that they pointed out a dinosaur fossil footprint, and I picture my foot next to this
big
dinosaur
old
fossil footprint.
How was you going to get away from that thing?
Well, you know what? My foot was bigger, so I was all good.
That's hilarious.
So coming back to the journey, I mean, really leaving corporate was I learned a lot of tools, a lot of skills that I use in my consulting practice with LavaFish advisors. So I'm very grateful for that. But it also gave me a chance to say, what am I going to write and what direction am I going to create? So I had actually identified a relatively new program at Columbia in School of Professional Studies called the Sustainability Management Master's Degree.
I'm familiar.
And my children are grown adults, but I had that one piece of paper hanging on my refrigerator for a couple of years. So I decided to go for an information session, and as Steve Cohn, who started the program, was going down the list of who this is for and what the benefits for, I go, well, that's me. That's me.
Right.
That's me. And it had been decades since I was in an undergraduate setting, and I went through the process of applying. And what was surprising to me is that had I taken all of the that I had taken for credit, whether it was in the insurance field, whether it was in business school, and put it together, I had enough credits for a master's degree. I just was not in a master's program.
Right.
So, as you know from looking at me and from people who are going to see this on camera, I sort of bent the age curve a little bit. Going to graduate school. Most of my classmates were my children's age.
Yeah, right.
I was on the student government. I was in gung ho. And I set it up that during my last semester, I had a light course load. I had a capstone that I was doing. It was a joint CEPA SUMA capstone, which it was actually doing a industrial energy efficiency project for the Natural Resources Defense Council. And I was fortunate enough that the client gave me permission to turn it into an article, which I published after graduating, after completing the project.
Nice.
In the Journal of Sustainable Banking and Finance.
Nice.
Yeah, and it's called Changing the Conversation.
Yeah.
Changing the conversation.
It was just, that was a rewarding piece of it. The frustrating piece of what was going on is I was doing, full-time job hunting. Because I envisioned having this degree and going to work for someone else.
Right.
And what I found
after retirement,
I could not get my resume out of HR. I cut 10 years off my experience. I cut 15 years off my experience. I cut 18 years. My classmates were getting interviews for the same jobs I was applying for. And in 3 cases, I had a personal connection to somebody on the board of directors of the company. And even that couldn't get my resume out of HR. So I kind of got the message about ageism. And I said, okay, so what are you going to do about it? And I think it was the confidence from successfully earning a graduate degree from Columbia and the confidence in my skills and my smarts that...
He's a smart guy.
Yeah, led me to saying, you know what, I should probably think about going into business for myself.
Yeah.
And my wife had her company for a couple of years, and we were doing some personal development.
What's your wife's name?
My wife's name is Lee Murphy Wolf.
Lee Murphy Wolf.
She's at LeeMurphyWolf.com, while I'm at LavaFish Advisors.
I got you.
So it's a women-owned business. I've always been supportive of women getting ahead in the world.
Me too.
When I was in the corporate setting.
I'm a big fan of that.
Yeah.
That's my thing. Women, the smarter the women are, the better off we are.
Absolutely.
That is absolutely true. That is absolutely true. Snarky comment comes to mind, but I don't think I'm going to say it.
All right, go ahead.
About one particular man that could use some more advice from a woman.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, let's not go there.
All right, let's not go there. So, so I basically started working with business coaches and people who did work in transformational work in the business space and did some personal development work. And started off by saying to my wife, "Look, you don't like tech. You don't like the financial side of stuff. I can do tech and I can do financial stuff in my sleep. Let me support you in the business.
Yeah.
So that's where it started.
Yeah.
As I was supporting her, and as she was bringing her message out to SoFil female entrepreneurs, I was thinking about, well, what's my positioning?
Yeah.
And I started in a somewhat different place than I ended up. I started off, well, first of all, I lived the first thing that I started off with. So when I graduated from Columbia, and this is sustainability is my encore career, as they euphemistically call it.
Right.
I was a social worker for a couple of years, and then I headed up the market research and strategy function in large Fortune 500 companies in a number of different verticals: financial services, performance chemicals, wireless communications, and I worked for some of the largest advertising agencies in the world, where I worked on both B2B and B2C products.
Yeah.
Procter & Gamble was the cause of a major upheaval in the end of my advertising years at Young and Rubicam and Ogilvy & Mather and Saatchi & Saatchi Content.
Wow.
And if I had known then that it was the tail end of the Madman era, I probably would have been more of a madman than I was. I mean, I do remember, those 3 martini lunches that, people that you're collaborating with too, and just hold your head up till the end of the day. But I was young, I didn't know much, and there were a few things that, knowing what I know now, I would have done quite a bit differently. So I, really decided that I needed to understand who I was, and I also have found that being involved in professional associations is critical throughout any career that you're in. So when I came out of graduate school, I said, okay, where's the Professional Association for Sustainability Professionals? I mean, Columbia has a great smorgasbord of things I can always go back to on the Upper West Side.
Of course.
But I uncovered an organization which I was not familiar with called the International Society of Sustainability Professionals.
Yeah.
They were just launching their credentialing program that year. It's actually being managed by the U.S. Green Building Council, who does all the LEED certification.
Yeah, LEED.
Right? And so they're doing the ISSP certification. And I called them up and said, hey, I want to start a chapter in New York for you. And they said, well, who are you and why should we talk to you? Seriously.
Wow.
That was the first reaction. We got past that conversation.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Clearly.
We had a strategic planning meeting in my living room just a little over 5 years ago. And that group launched its first program 4 years ago. And last week we did our 38th program.
Wow.
All bootstrapped, all volunteered. And it was a way that I found that I could bring together all of the sustainability professionals in supranational, international, federal, state, city, community board, block associations, anyone who's doing anything in the sustainability space. And it obviously gave me some authority and influence in this space because I was the person who was founding it.
Yeah, right.
Exactly.
Right.
So as I was doing the work, I really wanted to build out on the market research skills that I had, which when I was in corporate led me to strategy, led me to talent acquisition and employee engagement, led me to customer loyalty, led me to new product development, led me to branding, competitive analysis, big data. All of those skills at the end of the day, my clients, I really functioned like an internal consultant all those years, my clients were basically looking to make a business decision. So they weren't really concerned about the details, right? They were more concerned about, did you go out and do the right amount of information gathering, and can you help me make a better business decision? So that's what I do at LavaFish Advisors right now. And the focus of the work usually starts with a sustainability conversation. Oftentimes it leads into executive coaching. I was fortunate enough to have had an executive coach when I was in corporate, and at the end of the engagement, I got promoted to be an officer of the company. And my coach also said, you'd be a really good coach. You should think about becoming a coach. So I took his advice and I went out and I got a certification from NYU in executive coaching. So that's part of the practice that I do too. But what's probably not really all that obvious is that in the role of market research, I've moderated literally hundreds of groups myself, and I've managed moderators for thousands of groups. I've done hundreds of groups in new product invention sessions, brainstorming. That's one of the tools that I applied to coming up with LavaFish Advisors. And I realized that a lot of people who work in corporate and who have market research backgrounds don't actually have hands-on experience doing groups. And this is where my psychology and my social work group background really came in handy in terms of understanding people's values and attitudes and beliefs and why they would behave certain ways and wouldn't behave in other ways. And it's still the same today. If you're the leader of a large organization and you set out a vision and strategy, and you're leading people and people don't want to go where you're leading them, you got to understand why.
But what topics do you really talk about? What do you really focus on? Besides, you say sustainability is the thing, right?
Right.
So the idea is to have us realize that we should be living what kind of life? Tell me what you.
So there's a concept in the world of sustainability that I think really drives my perspective on everything, and it's called natural capital.
Natural capital.
Okay. Now, in the world of finance, we have not started to value natural capital. Otherwise, we would have a carbon cap and trade system.
Yeah, I talk about it all the time.
But natural capital is the air we breathe, the water we drink.
I talk about the relationship with
the food we eat.
Right, I talk about it all the time.
Right, the social justice in the supply chain of people who are making the goods that we use in our lives, that we wear, or the iPhones that we use, or
all the time.
Android phones.
Yeah. Give love to the Android. A little bit. A little bit.
There's two operating systems out there.
Yeah. Let's do it.
So, so to that extent, there are companies who are literally leading the way. I mean, I think Unilever is really a prime example. Walmart is a prime example. It's like,
heck yeah.
We know what's coming, and we know we have to do different, and we have to do better. But there's a whole bunch of other companies that are just waking up to this in the small and medium market. Some of them are looking for, how do I get started? Some of them are, I've started, I don't think I can do any more. Is there more to be done? Some of them are seeing a sudden shift in their business because of a new competitor, and they can't figure out what's going on, and they're looking for someone to help them diagnose what's going on. And sometimes it's a question of the values that your company appears to be living by is not aligned with your customers. You look at millennials; they only want to do business with companies that are aligned with their values.
Tech.
Right.
Yeah.
But millennials drink coffee, they eat food, they buy clothes.
Heck yeah.
They go out to restaurants. They travel. So they're making decisions along the way. So I've tried to use my own personal values and sustainability to demonstrate, things that I can do to live more sustainably. So over the summer, my wife and I started collecting food scraps for composting. Last year, we had a big trip to India where I did some business in Mumbai and also in Dubai. But I bought carbon offsets for the airplane travel. We went and visited my brother-in-law in London last summer. We also wanted to see Paul Simon in his farewell concert. That was the last gig. You had to go out there and
how was that?
The homeboy, right?
Yeah. How was that?
That was an amazing concert.
I can imagine.
Yeah, I mean, it's festivals in England are unlike anything I've experienced.
Yeah, I can imagine.
He was the headliner, but his warm-up acts were James Taylor and Bonnie Raitt, who would sell out arenas on their own.
Right?
Yeah, and then there was 18 other bands playing on 3 stages that I never heard of, and London was actually being affected by climate change because it was northwards of 92 degrees that day outside, and people were saying it never gets this hot in London. It's usually cold and chilly, and people were pulling out umbrellas to create some shade for themselves. They just weren't used to the heat.
They weren't used to it.
But the show rocked, totally rocked.
I can imagine. It's like the last time I went to a concert, it was a reggae concert with Junior Marley. And I was like, whoa! I had VIP passes. I was backstage. It was okay. All right, let's get back.
All right. So to come back to more, really the type of consulting work that I do. Is what's the business problem, and do you need a brain or a set of hands or both to help you work it through? Okay, so oftentimes the conversation starts with sustainability, but it usually opens up into operational areas, into strategy areas, into personnel areas. So it really just depends.
What are some of the challenges that you see are consistent throughout clients?
Really, one consistent challenge throughout clients. Communication.
Communication.
Yep. message sent and message received. And oftentimes, I know this is visual, like this. I'm crossing my hands, missing each other in two different directions. I would say that a large amount of the customer loyalty work that I did really focused on internally in large organizations, people knowing what other people in the organization did so they could refer, an issue that comes up for a client to the right area of the company, as opposed to just reading a script and leaving the company, not owning the issue.
Yeah. Wow.
And I think with my clients, oftentimes I'll be brought in and I'll work with somebody and they'll ask me to work with 2 or 3 other senior executives in their organization. And sometimes I do individual coaching with them and serve as sort of a back channel to test out ideas. Other times you get them all in a room together and, lock the door and don't let anyone out, not even for a bathroom break until we hash it out.
Yeah.
And that goes, again, sustainability is sort of the entry point for the conversation for me. But the consulting is really classic management consulting.
Yeah.
And having worked in financial services for quite a while, being able to read a P&L, understanding how money works, that's a pretty important skill set to have.
Absolutely.
Both from a personal point of view and from a corporate point of view.
Yeah, definitely.
And at the end of the day, I've been doing some of my classmates have now been in positions for quite a few years. I actually would call them colleagues, but they were classmates at the time that we attended Columbia. And one of the things that the sustainability leaders are struggling with is how do they have more impact in the company beyond what they're being handed to do as a portfolio? Write this report, deal with this organization, report out this data, keep shareholder resolutions out of the annual meeting, get employees engaged, give us something that we can talk about in the annual report. Make sure we're good, we get good rankings in all these third-party agencies that are ranking companies on sustainability, on being good corporate citizens. And yet, if you look at where a lot of the sustainability reporting lines are, they tend to be in communications areas, they tend to be in investor relations areas, and they oftentimes don't have the direct line of sight to the CEO of the company. Not always, because there's some companies are leading on this, but in many cases they're not. So I've been running some workshops for those people who want to create greater impact in their role and learn how to align what they want to do, the communication piece, align with what they want to do with the intended recipients so they can get more resources, more visibility, when budget crunch time comes. Because in large organizations, there's always a look at, well, do we really need to be spending this much on this function, or can we do with less? How do you at least, at minimum, hold on to what you have to, and actually how do you grow and expand if that's what it's called for?
That's interesting.
Yeah.
All right, so you're the perfect person to ask this question.
Okay.
All right. Can we actually move past sustainability? Can we actually move in a direction where we are comfortable, where things are back on track, where we're saying, okay, we don't need to worry about sustainability as much as we think we need to?
So there's two questions in there. I think that the nature of humans are such that we will always adapt, because survival is a key driver to the existence of the human race. And
we go extinct too.
We have to adapt. If you look at all the things that have been predicted that people kind of naysayed 10, 15, 20 years ago. California's burning for what number year in a row? You're now getting Arctic plunges, which is basically,
scary. I was watching
it's a 1,000-mile wide hurricane with a storm in it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's scary.
It is crazy stuff, and so we will adapt on one level. I don't think it's going to be a sustainability strategy, though. I think it's going to become a resiliency and adaptation strategy, and I don't think that we're going to be privileged enough to go back to the way it was, because there's too many things. Let's put it this way: if you read the latest scientific research, and everybody stopped doing anything that emitted carbon into the atmosphere right now. We stopped driving cars, driving buses, heating buildings. Okay, there's so much stuff in there that it would take decades for the planet to cool down. just because of everything we put in the air up until this moment. All right? On the other hand, there are companies that are doing, look, there are two things in my mind that they're going to make the biggest difference in terms of 100 years from now, 7 generations from now. This planet's still going to be here. Whether it's hospitable to human life, that's an open question. So I think there's really two things that are going to make a difference. One is we recognize the value that natural capital provides to sustaining human life. So we're going to need to plant a lot more trees, not burn the Amazon down.
Eschatology.
Okay?
You know eschatology? Do you know what eschatology is? Eschatology is the study of the end of time, the end of days.
Okay.
Right? The last Armageddon, they call it. And sometimes, and when I look into, I don't want to get all into religion but when I look into every one of the religion, they all deal with the end of time. They all deal with the end of everything. And I'm like, why is that? Why is it that it's so geared towards the end? And I'm thinking, oh man, maybe we can actually move past the end. Maybe we can actually, there's something that we can do to not make the end be what the end is. Because they're like, you know what I'm saying?
I do.
Yeah. So
and you have some people who are saying that moving past the end is basically populating the moon or Mars, and they're building they're building vehicles to take people and larger than 1 or 2 people inside of a capsule, to populate other.
Have you ever seen The Time Machine? That read the book?
Movie?
Yeah, read the book or seen the movie?
H.G. Wells' Time Machine.
Yeah, The Time Machine. I'm like, where did this guy think of all this? But sometimes, you're saying, can we go too far with this? Right? Can we go too far?
Well, I mean, I think that, look, I have one grandson. I have a granddaughter on the way. Don't congratulate me. I didn't do anything. It was like, congratulations. It's like, I didn't do anything. I just had a kid.
Yeah.
I got married. I decided to have kids, right?
Yeah.
And so I worry about what kind of world they're going to have.
Yeah.
And I want to do everything that I can. And the truth of the matter is that when I look at the generation that I grew up in, and the biggest issue at that particular time was the Vietnam War, which was being, fought on behalf of the American people. And there were a lot of different points of view about it, whether it was morally just or an immoral war. Okay? Suffice it to say, I was draft age eligible, and I protested against the war. And I was heartened to see the climate strike take place with, the activation from Greta Thunberg using social media to do that. And yet I'm also concerned because, the moratorium days and the protests that happened during the anti-Vietnam War protests, which also took place among active duty soldiers in war zones, okay, that was consistently happening over time. It wasn't sort of a once a year kind of thing and getting some articles out of it. And I was basically inspired to see so many young people getting out in the street saying, this is our planet too, and we're taking a stand for it. Okay, and that was what, 6 weeks ago.
Yeah.
When's the last time you've seen hundreds of thousands of people out in the street taking a stand for the climate? The biggest thing you see the news reporting on are rallies for people who are, currently in elective office or who want to be in elective office, or climate refugees that are happening because of, changes in geopolitical circumstances or in environmental circumstances far off of our shores. So I think I answered your question.
Well, I mean, I don't think my question even have an answer.
But we appreciate the opinion.
But here's what
we could have a perspective.
Yeah,
That's what
absolutely.
we're talking
That
about.
point of view.
Yeah. I think, right? I think that we have to answer some real direct questions as individuals who are going to be leaving a legacy on this planet. And one of the things that I really think that people should pay attention to is be very mindful of who you put in charge. Be very mindful of the leadership that you're putting in place, because those leadership are going to take us to the next level, to the next stage.
I agree with that.
You see what I'm saying, Mark?
That's the truth.
When I first met Mark, Mark and I, we were talking about sustainability, and we were talking about what do we see as, the things to help us maintain our life and maintain a proper place on earth where we all belong. And I thought that Mark was saying some of the most prolific things. He was saying profound things, and that's why I was like, "You got to come on the show." Remember?
I remember that conversation because there was a point that you asked me a really deep question, and I don't remember the exact question, but my answer stopped you dead in your tracks. I mean, you were literally speechless.
And that's hard
for about a 7 count. This guy was speechless.
Yeah, that's hard.
At least a 7 count.
Yeah. Wow. Really?
No. We were
Truthfully.
Get him, Mark.
No, Mark is a very prolific human being, and that's why I thought that he should come on the show and talk to us, because I asked him how can we maintain sustainability, and he just went in, and I was like, whoa, come talk to people about what we need to do and come on the show. He's an entrepreneur too, and your wife too.
Yep.
Right? So get her on the show too. But I wanted you to come on and let people understand, let our listeners understand that we need to be mindful.
We do.
Yeah.
And there's really 2 levels. There's the personal action level. Mm-hmm. Okay. I mean, I just heard a talk yesterday from somebody who has truly embraced sort of a zero waste life. Mm-hmm. So they basically spent a long time grappling with how do they eliminate any food packaging from their life, bags, cans, boxes. So they're basically going and buying, everything fresh. And then they said, well, do I really have to travel, or can I eliminate travel from what I'm doing? Mm-hmm. And found amazing, interesting people, who had decades of experiences living in other countries who shared openly their life with him. And he said, so I haven't traveled in about 4.5 years on a plane, and I'm okay with that. I'm living a full and rich life and able to do what I do. And he's a professor at NYU and an author and a speaker. So last night I was at an event sponsored by the Swedish American Chamber of Commerce, and they had a bartender who's owns a bar just opening in Stockholm this Friday, and it's a carbon neutral bar. And he said that their use of things to flavor drinks, that over 3 nights, 400 drinks, that they have an excess waste of about 6 ounces of stuff.
Wow.
For 400 cocktails.
That's amazing.
So you think about, we think about the abundance that we've had in our lives, and you walk into
and the waste,
a whole paycheck. I mean, a whole Foods, not whole paycheck.
Whole paycheck.
Yeah,
no,
whole paycheck.
You got it right.
And you walk in there and you look at
whole
all
paycheck.
this stuff, and you think about how far has that traveled, and do we really need to have fruits and vegetables that are seasonal only, like apples are seasonal in this region in the fall? Do we really need to have apples year round when they're being, what's the carbon footprint to get that apple from where it's being grown into a store so that we can have it? Should we be going back to a more simple lifestyle like our forebears, who ate what was available in the season that was available?
Wow. Yeah.
Mark, I want to ask you something that just popped in my head. If you had one idea to make us live more sustainable, what would that idea be? If just you had one idea, what would you say? I said, Mark, give me one idea.
Okay.
He said
I
just
can give you one idea.
One idea.
So the average carbon footprint for a human being in the city of New York over the course of a 12-month period is 17 tons of carbon. 17 tons of carbon.
17 tons?
17 tons of carbon. That's been calculated. So I think one thing that we can do is buy an offset for that. What kinds of offsets are available? You can buy a cook stove for somebody in sub-Saharan Africa so that they're actually cooking more efficiently and not breathing in things that are causing cancer. You could fund a wind farm project in India which has got an incredibly large population, and is soon going to outpace China in terms of number of human beings in one country on this planet. You know, and they've got a growing middle class. Right now, they're building a ton of coal plants to meet their electric needs. So buying an offset for how we're living that then provides renewable energy in the future, I think that's one thing.
Yeah.
And that's what I've been starting to do in my life. And in fact, one of the things that, you know, when I've been thinking about my journey, in 2003, I was living in New Jersey, and I needed to get a car. And at that point, there were 3 hybrid cars in the entire planet available. It was the original Toyota Prius, ugly, boxy.
Yeah.
It was the Honda Insight, which looked like the back of a sedan and the front of like a 70s
More
Citroen.
ugly. More ugly.
Yeah, more ugly. And then there was, and then the second year they came out with a hybrid Civic. So I bought a 2003 Honda Civic Hybrid. It had a 93 horsepower engine, a 10 kilowatt electric engine. There's a lot of empty space under the hood, but the sucker got great mileage. And even when I went skiing and put a ski box on top of it, it still got great mileage. Just not as good as it could without a box on top of it. And I was really kind of surprised with gas prices at that point were fluctuating in the $2.50 to $3.50 a gallon. Then more people weren't going with hybrid cars. Now, look, we can have a whole conversation about how dirty that end-of-life battery was going to be in that car. But at that point, I was really making a decision to vote with my pocketbook. I'm not one known to be on the bleeding edge of technology, but this was a first model year Honda. It was in the shop for a week when it wouldn't start. It turned out it just needed a software upgrade, but it took them a while to figure that out. So just kind of coming back, I mean, there's been things that I have done along the way, and sustainability, I think, for me, has just been a natural outgrowth. So we can all make a difference in ways large and small. At a more macro level, if I'm going to give you another idea, register to vote, go out and vote for the people who are really looking toward the future and not really
Hence my idea of being mindful of who we put into office.
Exactly.
Yeah, we have to be very mindful of that.
Now, Mark, we ask all our guests this one final question.
Okay.
The show is called Faith, Grind, Inspire. Which one of those 3 words resonates with you and why?
Faith.
Faith.
And the reason it does is because I've done work where I've come to know myself as an awake, powerful, and spiritual man, and gotten in touch with pieces of myself that were really buried deep down inside, because I was fitting into the corporate expectations of what a good worker or what a good manager, what a good leader was. And the inspire piece really resonates for me. I mean, the faith piece really inspires me. Let's go with both words. Answered it with faith. The faith piece is really having faith in myself and not seeking other people's approval or other people's permission to be the change that I want to see in the world.
Yeah, I'm all for that.
Yes.
I'm all for that.
Yes.
I think that is one of the things that a lot of people don't really take in fully. You see what I'm saying? They don't really fully take in the faith that they have to have in themselves. Like, you have to really go and do it. You see what I'm saying? I know you know that. I don't know. I'm preaching to the choir.
Well, I mean, listen. The truth of the matter is that when I decided years ago that my first marriage was not sustainable and that the behaviors that I was exhibiting to children were not the ones that I wanted to demonstrate, my goal was 10% less misery, 10% more happiness. Okay, and then I met Lee.
Yeah.
Okay, and I never knew that romantic comedies, those films, that are really funny and loving and engaging, I never knew that you could have a marriage like that.
Yeah, no, they're real.
And I'm blessed and full of gratitude every morning. I wake up next to this woman, and it's like, today's another day in our romantic comedy.
Yeah,
That's cool.
That's good.
Cool.
That's good. That's good.
You know what? I do have one last question that we always ask people too. What do you think of balance? Because you're an entrepreneur now, right? And so how do you balance everything, being a judge here, co-founder of this, an executive coach, you're teaching? Like, how do you and then you're married, you're a grandfather, great grandfather.
Just a grandfather.
Oh, grandfather.
Just a grandfather. My mom's the great grandmother.
Oh, your mom's yes. Your mom is a great grandma. Yeah. So how do you balance this? Help the younger guys.
Well, look, it comes down, I think, to time management. But at the end of the day, if you're passionate about something, it's not work. It's something that you enjoy doing. Mm-hmm. I've become very disciplined in terms of not being tethered to a phone. So there are a couple of times a day where I'm looking at emails or text messages, and for the other parts of the day, I'm either living my life, doing things that sustain me as a human being, and having impactful conversations with my clients. The other part of it is that we got into, my wife and I did some life design a couple of years ago and said, what do we want our life to look like? So we've actually are embodying the laptop lifestyle of entrepreneurship. Mm-hmm. So if I've got an internet connection, I've got my laptop, I can do business. Mm-hmm. And that led us to moving away from waiting until when the time comes to making the time now. So I've been blessed. Last year we bought a vacation home up in Vermont, and I spent the entire summer working from Vermont, eating locally sourced organic food.
Yeah,
nice.
I like restaurants in New York, but you know what? Food hasn't quite tasted as good as when it came from out of the ground, 10 miles of where I was staying.
Exactly.
Definitely.
And just to be fair,
yes.
Okay, I do need a car to get around in Vermont. But my car lives in Vermont, and I take Amtrak back and forth because that's how I'm committed to reducing my carbon footprint in productive ways.
I feel you.
I love it.
Love that.
So, Mark, how can people find you?
Yeah, where can people get the coaching sessions? Where can we?
So my website is www.lavafishadvisors.com, LAVAFISH advisors.
Right.
.com.
Right.
I'm also on Facebook. I'm also on LinkedIn. There's a few Mark Wolfs in the world. I use my middle initial D, which is for David. So Mark D. Wolf on Facebook or on LinkedIn.
All right. That's what I'm talking about. LavaFish.
LavaFish. My man Mark.
Hi. And
Thank
those
you so
of
much
you
for having me.
watching, just don't mind the backdrop. You know what I mean? Our parent company hooked us up.
Yeah, they hooked us up today.
77. You know what I'm saying? WABC radio.
Yeah,
it's hot.
But you know what that means to me?
What does that mean?
Cousin Brucey.
Yeah.
Cousin Brucey.
I hear you.
Dan Ingram.
Dan
Ingram, yep.
And Dennison, the men's clothing, it doesn't exist anymore, but they used to be the late night advertiser. Way back in the day.
Back in the day. All right, so
once again, thank you so much, Mark
Wolf,
for coming on. We would like to thank all our fans, all our viewers, all our listeners to the podcast of Faith Blind Inspire. We want to thank our producers Tim, Brianna, and you can catch us every Wednesday.
You're hired again, okay?
Every Wednesday, consistently on Faith Blind Inspire. Thank you so much, and remember, keep grinding, keep shining, and keep going no matter what.
No matter what.